Some of this information you have already seen in some other slides. This whole issue about law enforcement military liaison, this is all about finding our veterans sooner. And I believe that if you find them sooner as they hit the criminal justice system and you have some abilities to get treatment in early and do some diversion, we're going to have better outcomes. I'll skip this because you've seen this slide earlier when Buck did it for the Franklin County Veterans Service Commission. This is the current model. This is what happens in our justice system. So you arrest them, there's an arraignment, there's a pretrial screening, there's a trial and plea, and then you get to PSI. And what we know about this is it's at this point that the system really starts asking the question, are you a veteran? We try to get them to change the question and to ask it sooner. But because we're relying on self-identification, there are significant problems to it. There is the lack that they won't self-identify. It's late in the process as you look at the current model, but it's also limited. At the time that I took over Veterans Treatment Courts from Justice Stratton, there were 9 in the state of Ohio. Now through our work, there's 26. As a result of that, we're trying to get them to change the way they do it when they ask that question. But a lot of people say, well, Sharon, that just doesn't make sense to me. Why won't they self-identify? Universally, every single meeting I had with a veteran who had been through the justice system, when I visited the prisons to meet with the veterans in the pods at Madison and Marysville, these were their answers. Shame, fear, and lack of belief that they were a veteran. For many people who have served, if they didn't pick up a rifle and go to a foreign country in a war, they're not a veteran. Therefore, in their mind, they will never give themselves that title. This is the statute where the General Assembly attempted to help find veterans. One of the sentencing guidelines for those who will sentence is you have to consider whether or not that service in the military actually caused or increased the chance that they would have criminalized conduct. So if you go back to this current model and you're looking at it this late under the PSI system, when I went out and visited 62 of the counties and met with judges one-on-one, one of the things we talked about is how can we make this identification sooner? Change the way we ask the question instead of, are you a veteran, to have you served? If there's any hesitation, to do the follow-up. Well, did you serve in the Army, the Navy, the Marine Corps, the Coast Guard, and really push them? Over and over and over, I heard story after story from court judge who actually then finds a veteran in their midst that they didn't know. Having that same conversation where I come from in Butler County with the Sheriff's Department. They have 1,200 people in jail on a regular basis. When I asked the question of the chief, he said they had 2 veterans in the jail. He knew because his intake officers literally 2 days before I had this conversation with him said there was a problem. We have a lot more veterans in the jail than are identifying. He said, how do you know? And they looked at one another and said, what do you mean, how do we know? We know. He was talking to 2 individuals who had served. They talk differently. They carry themselves differently. They find one another and they create their own, what I would call, group that they stayed with while they were in jail. When we gave the Butler County Sheriff's Office the VRSS system, they started running it every single Wednesday when they do jail count day. As a result of that, they went from 2 to 22 in 24 hours. It allowed them to contact the Cincinnati VA and bring a VJO into the system. So they're running that every time they have a new jail population that they're going to run that report for every Wednesday. They're now getting it at the first box. But not everyone is doing that or has that potential. Despite how many times I go out on the road and have the conversation, it's trying to get a lot of people to change the way that they do their current business. But one of the things I found very encouraging, and I'm just going to skip this, is this law enforcement military liaison. This model comes out of Cincinnati. The Cincinnati Police Department developed it. What they realized is they were making crisis call after crisis call to the same home. Understandable. Someone who's struggling with depression, PTS, someone who is struggling with the after effect of war, right? Having those reoccurring nightmares, going back and seeing themselves in that time and not really reintegrating back into civilian life. Law enforcement was making that contact over and over again. What they ended up doing is saying, how can we make a difference in this? And what they ended up doing is they started creating their Lean Forward program for law enforcement officers respecting service, restoring honor for vets in crisis. When they looked at this program, they developed a leadership-driven veterans in uniform. They provide materials and do outreach. They changed the entire system of how they handle a reporting system in the police department. And that becomes imperative because now the reports have check boxes of I am dealing with a veteran. And as a result of that, there's two reports, one that stays in the internal file, but one that goes into the military liaison program, so that every officer who's now in that precinct, working that beat in that district knows they make a call to that residence, that's a vet in crisis. They then connect it with community partners. Not only does the VA go in, but then also their nonprofits who are willing to work with them. So in that, they had nonprofits who will go out, who will fund things for the veterans, but also help engage in care. How does the individual that's in crisis know they're dealing with someone who's a veteran? They started using their military tags on their uniforms. According to Sergeant Corlett, the minute you walked up to that door and that individual who had served sees the tag, the first thing they say is, I served in the Army, I served in the Marine Corps, I served in the Navy. It changed the paradigm of the conversation with the individual in crisis. This becomes important because when you look at this and you think about the justice system and where we start, if you have the ability to have law enforcement actually make that designation at the time that they're actually engaging, and they recognize that there is a mental health, PTS, depression, there are going back in time to service, as a Vietnam veteran said it to me, I've never left the jungles of Vietnam because every time I go to sleep, I am back there. As he's talking about that crisis, if law enforcement engages him in that moment of crisis, and they're talking about taking their own life, which Sergeant Corlett told those stories about, you have the ability to bring in diversion and treatment services. Law enforcement makes the decision to arrest. They make the decision to charge. And if there isn't a crime towards an individual, and they have that ability to do that diversion and save the life, that's their biggest goal. The exciting part about this program was if they could do it, why can't other police departments in the state do it? If you look at the numbers, a large segment of our forces who do policing engage in firefighting. They served in the United States military. Many of your 88 sheriffs, they themselves have served. So when you're meeting with them, they immediately find that connection that they should do more, as many of you do. We took this program, Justice Stratton and I went and met with Attorney General Dave Yost. And what he ends up doing is he created this Veterans Response Guide and program. He then, as the Chief Law Enforcement Officer for the state of Ohio, has engaged in this program and is set about, and this is in your materials, he developed this program of response guide of how to create it. It becomes important to share it with all of you because you're sitting in a sphere of influence that you have the ability to say to those in law enforcement that you engage on a daily basis, have you seen this project? Have you seen this program? What do you think your chief or your sheriff would think about engaging in it? The brochure gives you kind of a step-by-step approach of how to engage and create your own military liaison program. Right now, the Attorney General's office has this response program, and at the back of their guide, they tell you who their connection is at the AG's office to help you bridge that gap, and they will help you develop those military liaison programs. Their goal, when you read the Attorney General's quote, is about saving the life of the 22 who may take their life today. To me, it's a very worthy and noble cause to engage this and to make sure that we're all doing as much as we can and sharing the information that we have. Told you. While I thank you for being here and I would welcome your questions, I think Lyndon wanted to address one more thing for spouses who come to Ohio and seek education. Thanks for your time, and I really appreciate all of you coming.
Thank you, Justice Kennedy. Earlier, Justice Stratton asked me to speak about a new program, and I talked about the Military Spouse JD Network and the opportunities that are now available to spouses in the state of Ohio. But what she really wanted me to talk about is a brand new program that I learned about through the Military Spouse JD Network. And for anyone who's not familiar with that, if you know of a military member whose spouse has a Juris Doctorate degree and is having a challenge finding career continuity by following their military member, the Military Spouse JD Network is a nonprofit that specializes in assisting those spouses in finding meaningful employment. And this is a brand new program that specifically addresses the needs of military spouses with Juris Doctorate degrees who accompany their military spouse on an international or overseas assignment. Can you imagine how difficult it is for them as JD holders, lawyers, often admitted in their own home state jurisdiction to find employment when they go to Japan, as I did for 3 years, or they go to Germany for 6 years, as my spouse and I did. This new opportunity is called the Military Spouses Representing Veterans Fellowship. The Military Spouses Representing Veterans Fellowship. And it represents a salaried, full-time, 2-year fellowship open to new candidates each year, and those fellows represent veterans before the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims and the Board of Veterans Appeals. And fellows in this program also create educational materials for the veterans advocacy community and for future fellows. It's sponsored through another nonprofit called VetLag, which was founded by U.S. Marine veteran and military spouse Harold Butch Hoffman, and it's supported by VetLag and also by Aiken Gump Strauss Hauer-Feld. If anybody would like more information about this really unique and I think incredible opportunity, I, again, am the chair of the Military and Veterans Affairs Committee for the Ohio State Bar Association. You can contact me through their website, and I hope that's what you really wanted me to talk about, Justice Stratton. Thank you so much.
Yes, that's what I meant, but I was also glad you talked about the other program because that was also important. This has been recorded. We're going to edit it and we'll put it out for everybody to send. Please, everybody, send it to all your networks, all your connections, all your groups, all your associations. We want to spread this information because we had just a chock full of information today. It was so rich with lots of resources, and we really thank all those who participated, who took time to put those slides together, who put time in the materials, who traveled here, did the videos. to Mighty Crow for helping us organize all this, and all the team members for the committee that worked on this, and to Justice Kennedy and Alicia for their hard work, and again to our sponsors, Attorney General Yost, and to the Ohio State Bar Foundation for contributing some funding so that we could feed you lunch and snacks and pay for the facility and not have to charge anything. So again, thank you all for your service, whether you're a vet or whether you're helping vets. We appreciate you coming, and we appreciate all that you do. Thank you.